millionaire, leaves wife for infertility, returns years later to find her raising triplets without him. My beloved Peter's family, every day I spend 16 hours pouring my heart into creating content just for you. While you watch my videos, I sit here with tears in my eyes, wondering if my work truly reaches your hearts. Your subscription means more than just a number. It's a sign that my dedication matters, that these long hours away from family mean something. If my content has ever made you smile, taught you something, or brightened your day even a little, please consider hitting that subscribe button, leaving a comment with yes to let me know you're with me, being part of this growing family. Your support is what keeps me going. Should I continue? The answer lies in your hands. With love and gratitude, let's begin. On a Christmas night, after 15 years of marriage, Adam Bevan was shouting at his wife, "Sable, I'm tired of your ugly face. I endured this marriage, but you couldn't give me a baby. I never remarried, and now I'm 38. I need someone who can take care of my business in the future. You're infertile, and you can't become a mother. I'm divorcing you," he said, drunk. She didn't utter a word, quietly leaving the party, tears streaming down her face. 16 years ago, the crystal chandeliers of the Golden Crown pub cast a warm glow over the polished mahogany bar, their light catching the remnants of yesterday's rain on the windows. It was an unusually quiet Thursday evening in downtown California, the kind that seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of something extraordinary. Sable Morrison stood in the doorway, her elegant figure a stark contrast to the pub's boisterous atmosphere. At 18, she was already a woman who commanded attention without seeking it. "Come on, Sable." Cleo Jenkins tugged at her arm, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and exasperation. "You can't spend every night buried in those agricultural reports. Your parents wouldn't have wanted that for you." The mention of her parents sent a familiar ache through Sable's heart. It had been just 6 months since the tragic accident that left her alone to manage their sprawling agricultural empire. The weight of responsibility sat heavy on her young shoulders, but she carried it with a grace that belied her years. "I have a meeting with the board tomorrow morning," Sable protested weakly, even as Cleo guided her toward a corner booth. Her cream silk blouse and tailored black pants spoke of boardrooms rather than bar rooms, but there was something in the air tonight that made her resist less than usual. The pub was an institution in downtown California, known for its exclusive clientele and discreet service. Crystal glasses clinked against each other, creating a symphony of wealth and privilege. The air was thick with expensive perfume and even more expensive conversations. This was where the city's elite came to forget their responsibilities, if only for a night. "1 hour," Cleo promised, signaling a waitress. "That's all I'm asking. When was the last time you did something spontaneous?" Before Sable could answer, a commotion near the bar drew their attention. A group of men had gathered around someone, their laughter echoing off the walls. Through gaps in the crowd, Sable caught glimpses of dark hair and an expensive suit. Even from a distance, there was something magnetic about the man at the center of it all. "That's Adam Bevan," Cleo whispered, her eyes sparkling with gossip. "You must know of him? His father's furniture empire is legendary. The Bevan name is on half the luxury furniture in the country." Of course, Sable knew the name. The Bevan Richards Furniture Company was a household name among the wealthy. Their pieces graced her own home, selected by her mother years ago. But the man she saw now seemed a far cry from the business legacy he represented. Adam Bevan stood with the easy confidence of someone who had never known want. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his custom suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, but it was his eyes that caught and held Sable's attention when they suddenly met hers across the room, dark, intelligent, and holding a hint of something that looked almost like loneliness. "He's been through every socialite in the city," Cleo continued, oblivious to the electric moment passing between her friend and the man she was discussing. "Quite the reputation as a playboy. but there's something about him. They say he's different when he's sober. Brilliant businessman, actually. The drinking started after his father died. Sable forced herself to look away, reaching for the water the waitress had placed before her. Another lost soul drowning his sorrows in expensive whiskey, she murmured, but there was no judgment in her tone, only a strange understanding. As if her words had summoned him, Adam began making his way toward their table. His movement through. The crowd was smooth, practiced. People naturally parted before him, as if his presence commanded the space around him. "Cleo," he greeted warmly, his voice rich and deep. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." His eyes, however, never left Sable's face. "Adam!" Cleo's smile was bright. "Perfect timing. Let me introduce you to my best friend, Sable Morrison." There was a moment of silence as Adam took in the young woman before him. Sable felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch, but she met it steadily, refusing to show the sudden flutter of her heart. "Morrison?" Adam's eyebrows rose slightly. "Of Morrison Agricultural Enterprises?" Sable nodded, her chin lifting slightly. "Yes, and you're Adam Bevan, who seems to prefer drinking to running his father's company." The words were out before she could stop them, sharp and disapproving. Cleo gasped softly beside her, but Adam's response was unexpected. He threw back his head and laughed, genuine amusement replacing the practiced charm in his expression. "Direct and beautiful," he said, his eyes twinkling. "A rare combination." Without waiting for an invitation, he slid into the booth across from them. "Tell me, Mrs. Morrison, what brings someone like you to a place like this on a Thursday night?" "Someone like me?" Sable raised an eyebrow, ignoring Cleo's not-so-subtle nudge under the table. "Someone who clearly disapproves of drinking in a pub that's famous for its extensive whiskey collection." Adam leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Someone who looks like she'd rather be anywhere else, but whose eyes tell a different story." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibilities. Sable found herself studying him more closely. The fine lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and pain. The slight tension in his shoulders that his casual manner couldn't quite hide. "Perhaps," she said slowly. "I'm here to remind myself why I usually avoid places like this." Adam's smile changed then, becoming something softer, more genuine. "Or perhaps you're here because sometimes life has other plans for us than the ones we make for ourselves." The evening stretched before them, full of promise and danger in equal measure. Neither of them could have known that this chance meeting would set in motion a series of events that would change their lives forever, that this moment in a downtown pub on an ordinary Thursday night would be the beginning of a love story that would test the very limits of sacrifice and redemption. As the night wore on, their conversation flowed more freely. Adam ordered water instead of his usual whiskey, a small gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Sable. They talked about business, about their families, about the weight of legacy that they both carried. In those hours, they began to see past each other's carefully constructed facades, the playboy and the responsible heiress, to the real people underneath. When midnight approached, Sable rose to leave, conscious of her early morning meeting. Adam stood as well, his movement quick and decisive. "Let me have your number," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Please." Sable hesitated, years of caution warring with the inexplicable pull she felt toward this man. Before she could respond, Cleo had already scribbled the number on a napkin and pressed it into Adam's hand. "Use it wisely," Cleo warned him with a knowing smile. "She's not like your usual companions." As Sable walked out into the cool night air, she could feel Adam's eyes following her. Something had shifted in the universe that night, though she didn't yet know what. Behind her, the pub continued its Thursday night revelry, unaware that it had just witnessed the beginning of a story that would become both a triumph and a tragedy. A tale of love, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. Little did either of them know that this chance meeting would lead them down a path of passionate love, heart-wrenching sacrifice, and eventually to 3 beautiful children who would become the bridge between their broken past and their uncertain future. Chapter 2. Against all odds. The morning after their chance meeting, Sable's phone buzzed during her board meeting. She glanced down to see an unknown number, quickly silencing it as she continued her presentation about quarterly agricultural projections. By evening, there were 7 missed calls and a single text message. 1 dinner. That's all I'm asking. Adam. She deleted the message. The next day brought fresh flowers to her office, rare orchids arranged with expert care. The card read simply, "I haven't had a drink since Thursday night." She placed them on her assistant's desk. "These are gorgeous," her assistant Martha exclaimed. "Who sent them?" "A mistake," Sable replied firmly, turning back to her computer screen. But her eyes kept drifting to the delicate blooms, their subtle fragrance filling the space between her certainties. For 2 weeks, Adam's persistence manifested in daily gestures. Small notes appeared with coffee deliveries she hadn't ordered. More flowers arrived, each arrangement more thoughtful than the last. But it was the calls from mutual business associates that finally caught her attention. Reports of Adam Bevan showing up sober to meetings, making clear-headed decisions, turning down invitations to his usual haunts. "He's different," Cleo insisted over lunch at their favorite cafe. "I've known Adam for years, Sable. I've never seen him like this. He's really trying." Sable stirred her tea slowly, watching the leaves swirl. "People don't change overnight, Cleo. Especially not men like Adam Bevan." "Maybe not overnight," Cleo agreed, "but it's been 17 days, not a single drink. He's even started attending AA meetings. Did you know that?" Sable's hand stilled on her cup. She hadn't known that. That evening, when her phone buzzed for the 18th consecutive day, she answered. "Mr. Bevan," she said formally, "you finally picked up." His voice was warm, relieved. "I was running out of flower shops to call." "I'm not interested in becoming another notch on your bedpost," she stated bluntly. "Good," he replied, surprising her, "because that's not what I'm looking for. Have dinner with me. 1 meal. If you still think I'm not worth your time afterward, I'll never bother you again." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility. 1 dinner, she finally agreed. That's all. But 1 dinner turned into 2, then 3. Each time, Adam remained sober, engaged, showing her a side of himself that few had ever seen. He spoke of his father's death, the weight of inheritance, the spiral into drinking that had nearly cost him everything. She found herself sharing too, about losing her parents, the loneliness of running an empire at 18, the fear of letting people close. Their 4th dinner was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away from the city's scrutiny. Adam arrived early, having just come from an AA meeting. His vulnerability that night, the way he laid bare his struggles and hopes, touched something deep in Sable's carefully guarded heart. "My father built his empire from nothing," he told her, his fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. "He used to say that real strength isn't in never falling, but in how many times you get back up. I've fallen so many times, Sable. But meeting you, it's like finally finding a reason to stand again." She studied him across the candlelight, seeing past the polished exterior to the man beneath, complicated, flawed, but fighting his demons with everything he had. "Why me?" she asked softly. "There are plenty of women who would love to be with Adam Bevan, drinking or not." His eyes met hers, serious and clear. "Because you're the first woman who made me want to be worthy of being loved." The weeks turned into months. Adam threw himself into his father's company with renewed vigor, making headlines for his innovative business decisions rather than his scandals. Every milestone in his sobriety was marked by a small celebration. Quiet dinners, walks in the park, long conversations about their dreams and fears. The society pages buzzed with speculation about their relationship. The reformed playboy and the responsible heiress. It was too good a story to ignore. But within their private world, they were building something real, brick by brick, truth by truth. Their first kiss came on a rainy evening 6 months after they met. Adam had just finished a particularly difficult board meeting, restructuring his company's European division. Sable was waiting in his office, having brought dinner when she heard how long the meeting was running. "You didn't have to do this," he said, touched by the gesture. "I wanted to," she replied simply. He crossed the room in 3 strides, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her with all the tenderness and passion he'd been holding back. When they parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I think I've loved you since that first night at the pub." Sable's heart raced, but her voice was steady when she replied, "Prove it. Stay sober. Not for me. For yourself." "I will," he promised. "Every day. For the rest of my life." Their courtship became the talk of California's elite circles. Adam Bevan, transformed by love, working alongside Sable to merge their business empires. They complemented each other perfectly, her careful planning balancing his innovative spirit, his charm softening her serious nature. The proposal came exactly 1 year after they met. Adam had arranged for the Golden Crown pub to be empty, except for them. The same booth where they first talked, now set with fine china and crystal. "I wanted to bring you back here," he explained, "to show you how far we've come. 1 year sober, 1 year of loving you, 1 year of becoming the man I always should have been." He knelt beside the booth, pulling out a ring that combined both their family histories, a diamond from his mother's collection set in a band crafted from gold mined on Sable's family land. "Marry me," he said simply. "Let me spend the rest of my life proving that love can change a person, if it's the right love with the right person." At 19, Sable Morrison became Sable Bevan, in a wedding that merged 2 of California's most powerful families. The society pages called it a fairy tale, but those closest to them knew it was something far more precious, a love story written in second chances and unwavering faith. As they danced at their reception, Adam whispered in her ear, "Every girl in the city might have been crazy about me, but I'm crazy about you. Only you. Forever." Sable looked up at her new husband, seeing in his eyes the same love and determination that had won her heart. Against all odds, they had found each other, healed each other, and built a love strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Or so they thought. Little did they know that their love would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine, that the strength they found in each other would be pushed to its very limits. But in that moment, dancing in each other's arms, they were simply 2 people who had beaten the odds, found true love, and believed in the power of redemption. Chapter 3. The Golden Years. The first rays of morning sun filtered through the French windows of the Bevan mansion, casting warm patterns across the marble floors. Sable stood at the kitchen island, already dressed for the day in a tailored burgundy suit, reviewing agricultural projections while sipping her morning tea. The sound of footsteps made her smile, even before Adam's arms wrapped around her waist from behind. "You're up early," she murmured, leaning back against him. 4 years of marriage had only deepened their connection, each day adding another layer to their love story. "Board meeting at 8, Adam replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. The European expansion is finally ready to launch. His voice held the quiet confidence of a man who had found his purpose. Gone was the reckless playboy who had once haunted California's nightlife. In his place stood a respected businessman who had not only maintained his sobriety, but had transformed his father's furniture empire into something even greater. Their home, a stunning Victorian mansion overlooking the Pacific, had become a testament to their merged lives. Bevan Richards' furniture pieces were artfully arranged throughout, each one hand-picked by Sable, while the sprawling gardens showcased rare plants from Morrison Agricultural Research Facilities. The staff moved quietly through their morning routines, having long since adjusted to the young couple's early starts and dedicated work ethic. "Martha called," Sable said, turning to face her husband. "The new greenhouse project is ahead of schedule. We might be able to start the experimental crop rotation next month instead of waiting until spring." Adam's eyes lit up with genuine interest. Over the years, he had come to share Sable's passion for agricultural innovation, just as she had developed an eye for furniture design. Their business empires had flourished under their joint leadership, creating a synergy that impressed even their harshest critics. "We should celebrate," he suggested, reaching for his own cup of coffee. Black, no sugar, a reminder of simpler pleasures replacing his old vices. "Dinner at home tonight? I'll cook." Sable raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing in her eyes. "You mean you'll try to cook, and we'll end up ordering from that little Italian place on 5th? "That was one time," he protested, but his grin gave him away. "Okay, maybe 3 times. But I've been practicing." Their laughter echoed through the kitchen, a sound that had become familiar to the mansion's halls. These moments, simple and genuine, had become the foundation of their happiness. Later that day, Sable sat in her office at Morrison Agricultural Headquarters, reviewing reports from their various research facilities. At 23, she had grown into her role as CEO with remarkable grace. The photo on her desk showed her and Adam at last month's charity gala, his arm around her waist, both of them radiating happiness. Another frame held a picture from their wedding day, while a third showed them breaking ground on their latest joint venture, a sustainable furniture manufacturing facility that would use wood exclusively from Morrison-owned sustainable forests. Her assistant, Janet, knocked softly before entering. "Mrs. Bevan, the contractors for the new greenhouse project are here for the final review." Sable nodded, gathering her papers. As she stood, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the office windows. The young girl, who had once been overwhelmed by responsibility, had blossomed into a confident woman, strengthened by love and purpose. The days flowed into one another with a comfortable rhythm. Mornings began with shared breakfasts and business discussions. Days were filled with meetings, site visits, and the constant work of growing their enterprises. Evenings found them either attending business functions as California's golden couple, or, more preferably, enjoying quiet moments at home. Their 4th wedding anniversary arrived on a perfect spring evening. Adam had arranged for a private dinner in their garden, surrounded by blooming roses and twinkling lights. The table was set with their finest china, and soft music played from hidden speakers. "Do you remember that night at the Golden Crown?" Adam asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "How you told me you weren't interested in becoming another notch on my bedpost?" Sable smiled, squeezing his fingers. "You proved me wrong about so many things." "You saved me," he said simply, "not just from drinking, but from myself. You showed me what it means to live with purpose, to build something meaningful." The moonlight caught the tears in Sable's eyes. "We saved each other," she corrected gently. "Everything we've built together." Their empire had grown beyond their wildest dreams. The Bevan Richards Furniture Company had expanded into 14 countries, while Morrison Agricultural Enterprises had revolutionized sustainable farming practices across 3 continents. Their joint ventures had created thousands of jobs and pioneered new approaches to ethical business practices. But more than their business success, it was their personal growth that marked these years as golden. Adam had remained steadfastly sober, attending AA meetings regularly and becoming a mentor to others struggling with addiction. Sable had found the perfect balance between her natural reserve and the quiet joy of deep love. Together, they had created a partnership that inspired others. Their home had become a gathering place for family friends and business associates alike. Sunday brunches in their garden were legendary, bringing together the city's elite in an atmosphere of genuine warmth rather than mere social obligation. The staff often commented on how the mansion seemed to come alive with laughter and conversation, so different from the cold showpiece it had been in previous years. Even the media, usually quick to predict the doom of high-profile marriages, had to acknowledge the strength of their union. California's real-life fairy tale, one magazine dubbed them, featuring a cover story about their business success and enviable partnership. But it wasn't all grand gestures and public triumphs. The true magic lay in the quiet moments. Adam bringing Sable tea during late-night work sessions, Sable leaving encouraging notes in Adam's briefcase before important meetings, their shared walks along the beach at sunset, discussing dreams and plans for the future. They had created traditions of their own. Every Thursday, no matter how busy their schedules, they would have dinner at home. Just the two of them. Adam never missed one of Sable's board presentations, sitting proudly in the back of the room as she commanded attention with her innovative ideas. Sable attended every AA milestone celebration with Adam, her quiet presence a reminder of why he chose sobriety each day. Their love had grown deeper, more nuanced with each passing season. They had learned to read each other's moods, to offer support without words, to share both triumphs and challenges with complete trust. The physical passion of their early days had matured into something richer, an intimacy that encompassed body, mind, and soul. These were the golden years, 4 perfect years of growth, love, and shared dreams. Their world seemed unshakable, built on the solid foundation of mutual respect, unwavering support, and genuine partnership. If there were signs of the storms to come, they were too subtle to notice in the bright light of their happiness. The whispers in certain circles about Adam's occasional visits to private clubs, the slight tremor in his hands during particularly stressful meetings, the way his eyes sometimes lingered too long on the wine being served at business functions. These were easily dismissed as natural reactions to the pressures of success. Sable, absorbed in their shared dreams and growing enterprises, didn't see the shadows gathering at the edges of their perfect world. How could she? Their love story had already overcome so many odds. They had proven that people could change, that love could triumph over addiction, that 2 strong individuals could build something greater together than apart. But fate had other plans for the golden couple of California. The foundation of their perfect life was about to crack, testing their love in ways they could never have imagined. The next chapter of their story would reveal whether their love was truly strong, enough to weather any storm, or if some betrayals cut too deep for even the strongest bonds to survive. For now, though, they remained in their golden moment, successful, in love, and seemingly untouchable. Their mansion echoed with laughter and love, their businesses flourished, and their future seemed as bright as the California sun. They had created their own paradise, never suspecting that paradise, by its very nature, cannot last forever. Chapter 4. The Fall. The knock came at exactly 10:47 p.m. on a rain-soaked Tuesday evening. Later, Sable would remember how the antique grandfather clock in the foyer had just chimed its quarter-hour melody when Thomas, their elderly butler, opened the massive oak doors to reveal two stern-faced police officers, their badges glinting under the crystal chandelier's light. "Good evening," the taller officer said, his voice grave. "I'm Detective James Morgan, and this is Detective Sarah Chen. We're looking for Mrs. Sable Bevan." Thunder rolled in the distance as Thomas showed them into the mansion's formal sitting room, where Sable had been reviewing quarterly reports. The room, with its perfectly arranged Bevan Richards furniture and carefully curated art pieces, suddenly felt like a stage set for some impending drama. "Mrs. Bevan," Detective Morgan began, declining the offered seat, "we need to speak with you about your husband, Adam Bevan." Sable's heart stuttered, but her voice remained steady. "I'm afraid Adam is away on business in Washington. Is something wrong?" She set aside her laptop, rising to face them with the poise that had become her trademark. Detective Chen exchanged a glance with her partner before speaking. "Mrs. Bevan, we have reason to believe that your husband is not in Washington. We're investigating a series of high-stakes gambling activities that have resulted in significant financial losses. Your husband's name has come up repeatedly in our investigation." The words hung in the air like smoke, toxic and suffocating. Sable's fingers gripped the back of the antique chair her father-in-law had crafted himself, its solid wood providing an anchor in a world that suddenly seemed to be spinning off its axis. "There must be some mistake," she said, her mind racing to the morning 3 days ago when Adam had kissed her goodbye, his overnight bag packed for what he claimed was an emergency meeting with East Coast investors. "Adam hasn't gambled in years. He's been sober, focused on our businesses." Detective Morgan pulled out a small notebook. "According to our sources, Mr. Bevan has accumulated gambling debts totaling approximately $200 million over the past 6 months. These debts are owed to some very dangerous people, Mrs. Bevan, people who don't typically handle defaults with legal proceedings." The room seemed to tilt sideways. 6 months. While she had been proudly watching Adam lead board meetings and charm investors, while she had been sharing their story of redemption at charity galas, while she had been planning their future. "Impossible," she whispered. But even as the word left her lips, small details began clicking into place. The late-night phone calls he claimed were international business deals, the unexpected trips, the slight tremor in his hands that she had attributed to too much coffee. "We have surveillance footage," Detective Chen said gently, "from various high-stakes gambling establishments across 3 states. The most recent is from last night. He was seen leaving a private club in Las Vegas after losing nearly $50 million in a single evening." Sable walked to the window, watching lightning split the sky. Their perfect life, their golden years, had been built on quicksand. Every business success, every tender moment, every promise of forever. How much of it had been real, and how much had been a cover for his secret descent back into addiction? "Mrs. Bevan," Detective Morgan continued, "we need to know if you have any information about your husband's current whereabouts. These people he owes money to, they're not known for their patience." "I told you," she said, her voice hollow. "He's supposed to be in Washington." The words tasted like ashes in her mouth. The detectives shared another look. "We've already checked all his known properties and business locations. His phone has been turned off since leaving the casino last night. If he contacts you, it's crucial that you inform us immediately. Your husband's life may depend on it." They left their cards on the antique coffee table, their warnings hanging heavy in the air. After they left, Sable stood motionless in the sitting room, surrounded by the trappings of their supposed perfect life. Family photos smiled down from the walls, their wedding day, charity events, business launches. How many of those moments had been shadowed by his secret struggles? The week that followed was a blur of sleepless nights and unanswered calls. Sable maintained a facade of normalcy at the office, but behind closed doors, she was frantically trying to piece together the extent of Adam's deception. Their accountants uncovered a web of hidden transactions, unauthorized loans, and mortgaged assets. The empire they had built together was balanced on the edge of a knife. On the 8th night, as rain once again pounded against the windows, Adam finally returned home. Sable was in their bedroom when she heard his key in the lock. She watched through the security feed on her tablet as he entered, looking disheveled and haunted, so different from the confident businessman who had left just days ago. She met him in the foyer, where the grandfather clock now showed 2:13 a.m. Adam's expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, his whole body radiating defeat. "Sable," he breathed her name like a prayer. "I can explain." $200 million, she said quietly. 6 months of lies. Was any of it real, Adam? Any of it at all? He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I love you. That's real. It's always been real. I slipped. One game, months ago. I thought I could win back what I lost, make it right before you ever knew. But it kept getting worse, and I couldn't stop." "The police were here," she informed him, her voice eerily calm. "They say the people you owe money to aren't the type to accept bankruptcy proceedings as an answer." "I know," he whispered. "I know. But I have a plan. There's a way to fix this, to make it all right." He looked up at her, his eyes desperate. "Your family's land. If we sell it. My heritage." The words came out sharp as glass. "The land my parents spent their lives building. That's your solution." "Just temporarily," he pleaded. "We can buy it back once I rebuild the furniture business. Your uncle would give us a fair price. $250 million would cover the debts and give us something to restart with. Please, Sable. I don't know what else to do." Thunder crashed outside, as if nature itself was reacting to the magnitude of what he was asking. Sable looked at the man on his knees before her, the man she had loved, the man she had believed in, the man who had just shattered every promise he had ever made. "If I do this," she said slowly, each word weighted with significance, "you will never gamble again. You will return to AA meetings. You will focus entirely on rebuilding our businesses, and you will spend the rest of your life making this right." "Anything," he promised, reaching for her hands. "Everything. I swear on my father's grave." But as Sable looked into his eyes, she saw something that sent a chill down her spine, a shadow of doubt, a flicker of the demon that had driven him to this point. In that moment, she knew with terrible certainty that this wouldn't be the last time their love would be tested by his demons. Yet she would sign away her heritage the next morning, watching as her uncle's lawyers drew up the papers with efficient speed. The land that had been in her family for generations would change hands, and with it, a piece of her soul would die. Adam's debts would be paid, their empire would be saved from immediate collapse, but something fundamental had shifted in their relationship. The trust they had built over 4 golden years had cracked, and through those cracks, darker days were beginning to seep in. What Sable couldn't know, as she watched the rain continue to fall outside their mansion windows, was that this was only the beginning of their trials. The real test of their love and her strength was still to come. Chapter 5. The Ultimate Sacrifice. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Morrison family estate for what would be one of the last times Sable could call it her own. She stood in her father's old office, now a sanctuary of memories, running her fingers along the antique desk where she had watched him work throughout her childhood. The agricultural empire he had built stretched out beyond the windows, acres of carefully tended land that had been in their family for generations. "The papers are ready, Mrs. Bevan," her uncle's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, announced from the doorway. His voice was gentle, understanding the weight of what was about to transpire. Behind him stood Uncle James Morrison himself, his face etched with concern for his niece. Sable nodded, straightening her spine. The cream silk blouse and tailored black suit she wore felt like armor, protecting her from the emotional storm raging within. Through the large windows, she could see the workers going about their daily routines, unaware that their world was about to change. $250 million, Uncle James repeated, moving to stand beside her at the window. "It's more than fair market value, Sable. I want you to know that I'll protect this land, keep it producing, keep the workers employed. Nothing will change except the name on the deed." But everything would change. They both knew it. This land wasn't just property. It was her heritage, her parents' legacy, the physical manifestation of generations of Morrison dreams and hard work. Adam stood silently in the corner of the office, his usual confidence replaced by shame. He hadn't slept in days, his designer suit hanging loosely on his frame, his eyes haunted by the magnitude of what his actions had forced them to do. Mr. Harrison laid out the documents on the antique desk, thick stacks of papers that would transfer ownership of the Morrison agricultural lands to James Morrison's holdings. The $250 million would be transferred immediately. $200 million to settle Adam's gambling debts and $50 million for reinvestment in the Bevan furniture business. "You don't have to do this," Adam whispered, his voice cracking. "We could find another way." Sable turned to face him, her eyes meeting his across the room. "There is no other way, and you know it. These people want their money now. We're out of options and out of time." The weight of the fountain pen in her hand reminded her of watching her father sign important documents in this very office. How many times had she seen him make decisions that would affect hundreds of lives? He had taught her that leadership sometimes meant making painful choices for the greater good. "Before we proceed," Uncle James said, his voice firm, "I want to be clear about something." He turned to Adam, his expression hardening. "This land has been in our family for 4 generations. We've weathered droughts, economic downturns and natural disasters, but we've never lost it. Until now. Until you." Adam flinched but didn't defend himself. How could he? His gambling addiction had brought them to this point, forced this impossible choice. Sable began signing the documents, her signature flowing across page after page. Each stroke of the pen felt like another piece of her heart breaking away. These fields had been her playground, her sanctuary, her future. Now they would become just another business transaction. "The first transfer will be initiated immediately," Mr. Harrison explained as they progressed through the paperwork. "The full amount will be available within hours. We've expedited everything given the urgent nature of the situation." Urgent, such a polite word for the desperate circumstances they found themselves in. Somewhere in the city, dangerous men were waiting for their money, their patience wearing dangerously thin. As she signed the final document, Sable felt a shift in the air, as if the very land knew it was being surrendered. Outside, clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain. How fitting, she thought, that even the sky seemed ready to weep for what was being lost. Uncle James pulled her into a tight embrace once the papers were complete. "Your parents would be proud of you," he whispered, "not for losing the land, but for the strength you're showing in an impossible situation." Sable couldn't speak, afraid that if she opened her mouth, the sob building in her throat would escape. Instead, she nodded, squeezing her uncle's hands in gratitude. The next few hours passed in a blur of banking transactions and legal confirmations. By sunset, Adam's dangerous creditors had been paid, the furniture business had been given a lifeline, and the Morrison agricultural empire had changed hands for the first time in over a century. That evening, Sable stood alone in the garden behind the main house. This spot, with its carefully tended roses and herbs, had been her mother's pride and joy. Tomorrow, it would belong to someone else, even if that someone was family. "I'm sorry." Adam's voice came from behind her. "I know those words aren't enough, but I don't know what else to say." Sable didn't turn around. "Do you remember what you promised when we got married? That you would never gamble again, that you would make me proud, that our love would be enough?" "I remember every word," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Then tell me why," she demanded, finally facing him. "Tell me why our love, our life together, wasn't enough to keep you from destroying everything we built." Adam stepped forward, reaching for her, but Sable moved away. "The first time, it was just supposed to be one game. A business contact invited me to a private club. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was stronger now." "But you weren't," she said softly. "No," he admitted. "I lost. Then I tried to win it back and lost more. It spiraled so quickly, I kept thinking I could fix it before you found out, that one big win would make everything right again." Sable looked out over the darkening fields, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't just lose money, Adam. You lost my trust. You lost my father's legacy. You lost pieces of me I can never get back." "I'll make it right," he promised desperately. "I'll work harder than ever. We'll rebuild the furniture business, make it bigger than before. Then we'll buy the land back, I swear it." But Sable knew promises were just words, and words had lost their power to comfort her. The $50 million they had retained would help stabilize the furniture business, but rebuilding what they had lost would take more than money. It would take time, trust, and a kind of faith she wasn't sure she had anymore. As night fell over the Morrison estate for the first time under new ownership, Sable felt something shift inside her. The naive young woman who had believed in fairy tales and second chances was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had learned the hard way that love sometimes required sacrifices too great to bear. She walked back to the house alone, leaving Adam in the garden. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, new attempts at redemption. But tonight, she allowed herself to mourn for the land she had lost, for the trust that had been broken, and for the innocent heart that had believed love could conquer any obstacle. What she couldn't know then was that this sacrifice, as enormous as it felt, was just the beginning. The true test of her love, her strength, and her capacity for forgiveness still lay ahead, waiting in the shadows of their uncertain future. Chapter 6. Silent Storms. The years following the land sale brought changes that rippled through Sable and Adam's lives like aftershocks from an earthquake. Their mansion, once filled with laughter and love, grew quieter, its halls echoing with unspoken words and mounting tensions. As their 15th wedding anniversary approached, Sable carried a secret that weighed heavily on her heart while watching Adam slowly spiral back into his old habits. It started subtly. A missed dinner here, a cancelled meeting there. Adam threw himself into rebuilding the furniture business with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The $50 million investment had helped stabilize the company, but he seemed driven by something darker than mere ambition. Late nights at the office became more frequent, and the faint smell of whiskey began to cling to his clothes once again. Sable noticed everything but said nothing. She had her own precious secret to protect, one that filled her with equal parts joy and trepidation. The morning sickness she carefully hid, the subtle changes in her body that she disguised with loose clothing, all while watching her husband slowly unravel before her eyes. The Christmas party at their mansion was in full swing, crystal glasses tinkling and fake laughter bouncing off the walls. The city's elite had gathered to celebrate, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the perfect surface of the Bevan household. Sable moved through the crowd in a deep green evening gown, playing the role of the perfect hostess while keeping a watchful eye on Adam. He was at the bar again, his fourth whiskey of the night barely concealed in a crystal tumbler. 15 years of marriage had taught her to read the signs, the slight flush in his cheeks, the too loud laugh, the way his eyes didn't quite focus. The demons she thought they had conquered were dancing in those glasses, leading him back into darkness. "Mrs. Bevan," one of the board members approached her. "The new sustainable furniture line is performing exceptionally well. You and Adam must be very proud." Sable smiled diplomatically, even as she watched Adam dismiss their driver and reach for another drink. "Yes, we're very pleased with the market response." Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach, where their secret grew stronger each day. The evening wore on, guests gradually departing into the cold December night. By midnight, only a handful remained, mostly business associates too invested in their conversations to notice the tension building between the hosts. It was past 1 when the last guest left, leaving Sable alone with an obviously drunk Adam. She began removing her jewelry, each piece feeling like armor being stripped away. "Quite a success," Adam slurred, loosening his tie. "Everyone's very impressed with our recovery." "Very impressed indeed." His bitter laugh echoed in the now empty foyer. "You're drunk," Sable stated quietly, turning to face him. "We had an agreement about drinking, Adam." "Agreements?" He laughed again, harder this time. "Like your agreement to give me an heir. 15 years, Sable. 15 years of nothing." The words hit her like physical blows. If he only knew the truth growing inside her, the miracle she'd been waiting to share when he was stable enough to handle it. But looking at him now, swaying slightly in his expensive suit, she knew that moment hadn't yet arrived. "You're not yourself," she tried to reason. "Let's talk in the morning when you're sober." "I'm more myself than I've been in years," his voice rose, echoing off the marble floors. "Do you know what they whisper about us? About you? The barren wife who can't give the Bevan name an heir. I've waited long enough." Sable felt ice form around her heart. "Is that what this is about, your precious heir? Don't pretend you don't know how important this is." Adam's face was flushed with anger and alcohol. "My father's legacy, my family's future. It all dies with me because you can't do the one thing a wife should be able to do." The slap echoed through the foyer before Sable even realized she'd moved. Adam staggered back, more from surprise than force, his hand going to his cheek. "Sable, he started, but she cut him off. "Enough!" Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "You want to talk about legacy? About family? You gambled away my family's legacy without a second thought. You broke every promise you ever made to me, and now you dare to stand there and blame me for your failures?" But Adam was too far gone, too lost in his drunken rage to hear the pain in her voice. "I'm tired of your ugly face. I endured this marriage, but you couldn't give me a baby. I never remarried, and now I'm 38. I need someone who can take care of my business in the future. You're infertile, and you can't become a mother. I'm divorcing you." The words hung in the air like poison. Sable felt them seep into her skin, into her soul, into the very life growing inside her. Without a word, she turned and walked out of the mansion, tears streaming down her face. The December wind bit at her exposed skin, but she barely felt it. Behind her, she could hear Adam calling her name, his voice a mixture of anger and regret, but she didn't stop. Her car was waiting in the circular driveway, the keys a comforting weight in her trembling hands. As she drove through the empty streets of California, one hand rested protectively over her stomach. The secret she carried was no longer just a joy. It had become a responsibility, a future she needed to protect from the poison of addiction and betrayal. The next morning, divorce papers would be delivered to the mansion. Adam would wake from his drunken stupor to find them on his desk, along with a note that contained just 3 words: "You never knew." What Adam couldn't know, as he raged and drank through that Christmas night, was that his cruel words about infertility had struck a woman carrying his children. 3 precious lives that would remain unknown to him until fate decided otherwise. Years would pass before he would understand the full magnitude of what he had lost that night. The familiar halls of their mansion would grow cold and empty, echoing with the ghosts of what might have been. But for Sable, that Christmas night marked not just an ending, but a beginning, a chance to protect the miracle growing inside her from the storms that had torn their love apart. As she drove into the darkness, her tears finally drying on her cheeks, Sable made a silent vow to her unborn children. They would know love without conditions, strength without cruelty, and a legacy built on something far more precious than furniture empires or agricultural lands. They would know the truth of who they were, but only when the time was right, when their father had proven himself worthy of the gift he had so carelessly thrown away. The Christmas lights blurred past her car windows, their cheerful colors a stark contrast to the darkness in her heart. But beneath that darkness, 3 tiny hearts beat in perfect synchronization, carrying the promise of a future that neither Sable nor Adam could have imagined on that fateful night. Chapter 7. New Beginnings. The California village where Sable's family land once flourished became her sanctuary in the months following that fateful Christmas night. Her Uncle James had quietly arranged for a beautiful farmhouse on the edge of the property, far from the prying eyes of society and the whispers that followed her departure from the Bevan mansion. Spring was just beginning to paint the fields with new life when Sable first discovered she was carrying not 1, but 3 precious lives within her. The doctor's announcement had left her breathless, sitting alone in a small clinic miles from her former life. "Triplets," Dr. Sarah Martinez had said, her kind eyes watching Sable carefully. "All 3 heartbeats are strong and healthy. Would you like to hear them?" The sound of those tiny heartbeats filled the examination room, each one a testament to the miracle she had kept hidden during those final, turbulent months of her marriage. Tears rolled down Sable's cheeks as she listened. Not tears of sorrow this time, but of profound joy and determination. Uncle James became her strongest ally, fiercely protecting her privacy while helping her build a new life away from the spotlight. The farmhouse was transformed into a warm home, its rooms gradually filling with everything 3 babies would need. The local villagers, many of whom had worked for the Morrison family for generations, formed a protective circle around their former employer's daughter. "You don't have to do this alone," Uncle James told her one evening as they sat on the farmhouse porch, watching the sun set over the fields. "We could tell him. Despite everything, Adam has a right to know." Sable rested her hands on her growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement beneath. "No," she said firmly. "He lost that right the night he chose his demons over our marriage. These children deserve better than a father who drowns his responsibilities in whiskey and gambling." The months passed, each one bringing new challenges and quiet victories. Sable threw herself into preparing for motherhood with the same determination she had once applied to running agricultural empires. She read every book she could find on raising multiples, converted the farmhouse's spare rooms into a bright nursery, and slowly let herself heal from the wounds of her past. The villagers watched over her like guardian angels. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had worked in the Morrison kitchens for 30 years, brought home-cooked meals and grandmother's wisdom. Mr. Chen, the local carpenter, crafted 3 beautiful cribs from sustainable wood, a gentle reminder of the furniture empire she had left behind. Even the youngest children in the village became protective, running to warn their parents if any unfamiliar cars approached the farmhouse. As her due date drew closer, Sable found herself spending more time in the nursery, running her fingers over tiny clothes and imagining the lives that would soon fill this space. The room was painted in soft greens and yellows, deliberately avoiding the blues that reminded her too much of Adam's eyes. "They're going to be fighters, like their mama," Mrs. Rodriguez declared one afternoon as she helped Sable fold impossibly small onesies. 3 blessings to heal 3 hearts. The birth came earlier than expected, on a warm summer evening when the fields were golden with sunset. Uncle James had insisted on having the best medical team on standby, converting part of the local clinic into a private maternity ward. For 14 hours, Sable labored to bring her children into the world, each contraction a reminder of the strength she had discovered within herself. At 3:47 a.m., the first cry pierced the night, a strong, defiant sound that brought fresh tears to Sable's eyes. Within minutes, 2 more voices joined the chorus, 3 perfect souls announcing their arrival to the world that had been waiting for them. 2 boys and a girl, the doctor announced, placing each swaddled bundle in Sable's trembling arms, all healthy, all strong. Looking down at their tiny faces, Sable saw echoes of both herself and Adam, his dark hair on one boy, her green eyes in their daughter, a perfect blend of their features in the second son. They were living proof that love, even when broken, could create something beautiful. The news of the births was kept quiet, known only to those in the village who had become Sable's extended family. She named them with careful thought: Alexander James, after her father and uncle; Benjamin Thomas, for her grandfather, and the faithful butler who had served their family for decades; and Charlotte Rose, for her mother and the garden she had loved so dearly. Life settled into a new rhythm, marked by midnight feedings and first smiles, tiny victories and sleepless nights. The farmhouse rang with baby laughter and occasional tears, but never with the sound of angry words or broken promises. Sable poured all the love she had once given Adam into their children, teaching them about strength, dignity, and the power of unconditional love. The villagers watched the triplets grow with pride and protection, understanding the precious secret they were all guarding. They became experts at deflecting questions from outsiders, at protecting the little family that had become the heart of their community. As the children grew, Sable saw more of Adam in them each day. Alexander's determined chin, Benjamin's charming smile, Charlotte's way of crinkling her nose when she laughed. But she also saw herself in their strength, their kindness, and their ability to find joy in simple things. The years passed quickly, marked by first steps and first words, skinned knees and bedtime stories. Sable built a life filled with love and purpose. Far from the glittering social circles she had once inhabited, the children thrived in the freedom of country life, unaware of the wealthy heritage that waited on both sides of their family tree. But Sable knew the day would come when their father would discover their existence. She prepared for it quietly, documenting their lives in journals and photographs, recording every milestone and memory. When the time came, if Adam ever proved worthy of knowing his children, she would have a history to share with him, a history of the precious years he had lost through his own choices. 4.5 years passed this way, each season bringing new joys and challenges. The triplets grew into bright, curious children who filled their world with wonder and possibility. They were happy, secure in their mother's love and the protective embrace of their village family. Then one day, a familiar car was spotted on the village roads, a sleek black vehicle that hadn't been seen in these parts since the land had changed hands. Adam Bevan had returned, unaware that his greatest loss and his greatest blessing were living just minutes away from the fields he had once dismissed as worthless. The storm that had been brewing for over 4 years was about to break, and Sable knew that the peaceful life she had built for her children was about to face its greatest test. But this time she was ready. This time she had something worth fighting for that was greater than any fortune or empire. The pure, unconditional love of 3 precious souls who had never known their father's demons. Chapter 8. The Return. The black Bentley moved slowly along the dusty village road, its polished surface a stark contrast to the rural surroundings. Adam Bevan sat in the back seat, his expensive suit feeling suddenly out of place as he surveyed the agricultural land he had once dismissed so carelessly. 5 years had passed since the divorce, each day marking another step in his spiral of regret and self-destruction. The purpose of his visit was purely business. A potential furniture showroom in the nearby town had caught his interest. He hadn't expected the drive to take him past the former Morrison lands, hadn't prepared for the flood of memories that assaulted him as he recognized the fields where Sable's family legacy had once flourished. "Stop the car," he commanded suddenly, his eyes caught by movement near one of the orchards. 3 children, exactly 4.5 years old by their size, were playing beneath the apple trees. Something about their synchronized movements, their shared laughter, made his heart stutter in his chest. The first boy was chasing a butterfly, his dark hair catching the sunlight in a way that seemed hauntingly familiar. The second boy was climbing one of the lower branches, his determined expression a mirror of one Adam had seen countless times in childhood photographs of himself. But it was the little girl who made his breath catch. Her grace, her smile, the way she moved, everything about her screamed Sable. "Mr. Bevan?" his driver questioned, concerned by his employer's sudden pallor. Adam was already out of the car, drawn toward the playing children like a man in a trance. An elderly woman sitting nearby knitting immediately stood up, her posture protective as she moved between him and the children. "Can I help you?" she asked, but her tone suggested the opposite of assistance. "Those children," Adam managed, his voice rough. "Who are they?" The woman's expression hardened. "Miss Sable's little ones, and they're not for you to be concerning yourself with, Mr. Bevan." The world tilted on its axis. Miss Sable's little ones, 4.5 years old, the timing, the resemblance, the way his heart had recognized them before his mind could catch up. It all fell into place with devastating clarity. "Triplets," he whispered, though he already knew the answer. "Mrs. Rodriguez," a small voice called out. "Look what we found." The 3 children were running toward them, each clutching wildflowers they'd discovered. They stopped short at the sight of the stranger in his expensive suit, their identical expressions of curiosity, another confirmation of their shared parentage. "Inside now, my darlings," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "Your mama will be wanting you for lunch." Adam watched them go, his heart breaking with each step they took away from him. The boys' matching gaits, the girls' delicate movements. How had he not known? How had the world kept such a secret from him? "She was pregnant," he said, the words falling like lead between him and Mrs. Rodriguez. "That Christmas night when you broke her heart?" Mrs. Rodriguez finished sharply. "When you called her barren and threw away 15 years of marriage. Yes, she was pregnant, with 3 miraculous babies you didn't deserve to know about." The cruelty of fate struck him then, how his drunken accusations of infertility had been hurled at a woman carrying not 1, but 3 of his children, children who had lived and grown for 4.5 years without knowing their father, while he drowned himself in whiskey and self-pity. "I need to see her," he said, running a shaking hand through his hair. "Please, I need to talk to Sable." "Miss Sable doesn't see anyone she doesn't want to see," Mrs. Rodriguez replied firmly. "And after what you did, Mr. Bevan, I doubt she'll want to see you." But Adam was already pulling out his phone, calling every contact he had, desperate for a way to reach the woman he had wronged so terribly. The next weeks became a blur of attempts and rejections. He learned that Sable had built a quiet, protected life here in the village, surrounded by people who guarded her privacy with fierce loyalty. He discovered that Alexander, Benjamin, and Charlotte, even their names were perfect, were beloved by the entire community. Stories of their adventures, their kindness, their intelligence reached him through careful questioning and cautious observation. Each new detail was both a gift and a torture, revealing more of what he had lost through his own foolishness. The furniture showroom was forgotten. Adam took up residence in the nearby town, spending his days trying to catch glimpses of his children from a respectful distance. He saw them playing in the village square, watched them attend the local school, observed their happy interactions with the villagers who had become their extended family. More than once, he saw Sable with them, more beautiful than ever, her love for their children evident in every gesture, every smile. She had built something precious here, something pure and untainted by the demons that had destroyed their marriage. For 6 months he persisted in his attempts to arrange a meeting. Letters were returned unopened, calls went unanswered, and every approach was blocked by the protective circle of villagers who had appointed themselves guardians of Sable and the Triplets. Finally, after half a year of trying, Uncle James Morrison agreed to intervene. The meeting was arranged for a neutral location, the village community center where Sable taught weekend art classes to local children. "She's agreed to see you," Uncle James told him sternly, "but understand this, those children are her world. If you think you can walk back into their lives without proving yourself worthy, you're sadly mistaken." Adam nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. 5 years of sobriety had given him clarity, but seeing his children had given him purpose. Whatever Sable demanded, whatever price she named, he would pay it gladly for the chance to know the 3 precious souls he had unknowingly abandoned. The community center was empty when he arrived, save for Sable standing by the window. She turned to face him, and Adam felt the full force of his mistakes in the cold distance of her gaze. This was no longer the young woman he had married, nor even the wife he had driven away. This was a mother, fierce, protective, and unwilling to accept anything less than perfection when it came to her children's welfare. The moment hung between them, heavy with 5 years of unspoken words and untold stories. Through the window, they could hear children's laughter from the playground. Their children, living proof that love could create miracles even in its darkest moments. Adam took a step forward, his heart pounding with the magnitude of this moment. Everything he had lost and everything he hoped to gain rested on what would happen next. The path to redemption stretched before him, but first he would have to face the consequences of that terrible Christmas night when he had thrown away not just a marriage, but the chance to know his own children from their very first breath. Chapter 9. The Price of Redemption. The community center's empty classroom seemed to hold its breath as Sable and Adam faced each other for the first time in 5 years. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the large windows, casting long shadows across the floor between them. Children's artwork decorated the walls, cheerful splashes of color that stood in stark contrast to the tension filling the room. Sable stood with the quiet dignity that had become her hallmark. Her emerald green dress, a reminder of her continued elegance even in this rural setting. At 34, motherhood had added a new dimension to her beauty, a strength that radiated from within. Her dark hair was shorter now, falling just past her shoulders, and her eyes held a wisdom that came from raising 3 children alone. Adam had aged as well, though differently. His expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost, nor could his carefully groomed appearance mask the toll of 5 years of regret. He took a step forward, then stopped as Sable raised her hand in a silent command. Before you speak, she said, her voice cool and controlled, understand that I'm here only because Uncle James believes you deserve one chance to explain yourself. One chance, Adam. Make it count. They're beautiful, he whispered, his voice breaking. Our children, they're perfect. They're perfect because they've never known the pain of watching their father choose alcohol over family, Sable replied sharply. They've never had to wonder if their father would come home drunk or if he'd gambled away their future. Adam flinched but didn't argue. When did you know? About the pregnancy. I found out 2 weeks before that Christmas night, Sable answered, a flash of old pain crossing her face. I was waiting for the right moment to tell you, waiting for you to be stable enough to handle such a miracle. Instead, you stood in our home, drunk and cruel, and called me barren. The memory hung between them like a physical presence. Through the window, they could hear distant children's laughter from the playground, a reminder of all that had been lost and all that was at stake. I've been sober for 18 months, Adam said quietly. Completely sober, not just trying or pretending. I've been attending meetings, working with a sponsor. I'm not the same man who hurt you that night. Sable studied him carefully, noting the clarity in his eyes, the steady way he held himself. 18 months of sobriety doesn't erase 15 years of broken promises, she said finally. It doesn't give you the right to walk into their lives and risk breaking their hearts the way you broke mine. Tell me what you want me to do, Adam pleaded. Whatever the price, whatever you ask, I'll do it. They're my children too, Sable. Please, give me a chance to be their father. Sable moved to the window, looking out at the village that had become her sanctuary. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, a reminder that even the darkest days eventually end. 3 conditions, she said finally, turning back to face him. Meet them all, and we can discuss introducing you to the children. Fail at any point, and you'll never see them again. Adam nodded, his heart pounding. Name them. First, Sable's voice was steel wrapped in silk. You will repay me for the land I sold to save you. Its current value is $600 million. Every penny of it earned honestly, no loans, no shortcuts. Done, Adam agreed immediately. I can start liquidating assets. I'm not finished, Sable cut him off. Second, you will work as a farmer on that same land for 1 week. Manual labor, sunrise to sunset, no special treatment. I want you to understand the value of what I sacrificed for you. She paused, letting the magnitude of these first 2 conditions sink in. Adam stood silent, accepting each requirement with a humility he'd never shown before. And third, he asked quietly. You will never drink again, Sable stated firmly. Not one drop, not one slip, not one excuse. I want proof of continuous sobriety, regular AA meetings, sponsor reports, random testing if I request it. The moment you break this condition, any arrangement we make regarding the children becomes void. The conditions hung in the air between them, each one a test of his commitment, his character, his love for children he barely knew. Through the windows, the setting sun cast long shadows across his face as he considered the magnitude of what she was asking. The money will take time, he said slowly. Even liquidating everything, it could take years to gather that much honestly. Then it will take years, Sable replied without sympathy. I waited 9 months to meet our children. You can wait until you've proven yourself worthy of knowing them. Adam moved to the window, standing beside her but careful not to breach the invisible barrier between them. In the distance, they could see the fields where their children played, where their own love story had shattered, where redemption now waited at a price few men would be willing to pay. When I work the land, he asked, will they be there? Will I see them? No, Sable answered firmly. They'll stay inside with me. This isn't about seeing them, Adam. It's about understanding what real work means, what real sacrifice feels like. It's about earning the right to be part of their lives. He nodded, accepting this additional pain as part of his penance. And if I meet all three conditions, what then? Then we begin the real work, Sable said, her voice softening slightly. They're 4.5 years old, Adam. They have their own personalities, their own dreams, their own fears. Alexander is our serious one, always thinking, always planning. Benjamin has your charm. He makes friends wherever he goes. And Charlotte, her voice caught slightly, Charlotte has your father's artistic eye. She sees beauty in everything. Each detail was both a gift and a knife to Adam's heart, revealing more of what he had lost through his own foolishness. He listened as Sable shared tiny glimpses of their children's lives, Alexander's love of books, Benjamin's adventurous spirit, Charlotte's talent for drawing. Each word painted a picture of the family he could have known from the beginning, if he had only been worthy. 1 week from today, Sable concluded, you'll report to the farm manager at sunrise. He'll assign your tasks and supervise your work. Don't expect any special treatment because you're their father or because you used to be my husband. You'll work like any other farmhand. I understand, Adam replied, his voice humble. And the money? Take whatever time you need to gather it honestly, Sable said. I'm not interested in quick fixes or borrowed funds. I want to see real effort, real work, real change. She moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to face him one last time. Remember this, Adam. Those children are my world. They're happy, they're healthy, and they're loved. Don't think for a moment that I won't protect them from any hint of the pain you caused me. One slip, one broken promise, and you'll never see them again. As she reached for the door handle, Adam called out softly, their names, they're perfect. Sable didn't turn around, but her hand stilled on the door. Alexander James for my father and uncle, Benjamin Thomas for my grandfather and our loyal butler, Charlotte Rose for my mother and her beloved garden. She paused, then added quietly, they have your surname. Even after everything, I couldn't deny them that part of their heritage. With those words, she was gone, leaving Adam alone in the classroom, surrounded by children's artwork and the weight of his past mistakes. Through the window, he watched her walk across the playground, her figure straight and proud. In the distance, he could hear children's laughter, his children's laughter, carried on the evening breeze. The magnitude of what lay ahead was staggering. $600 million to earn honestly, a week of manual labor that would test his resolve, and a lifetime commitment to sobriety. Yet standing there, knowing his children were so close yet still out of reach, Adam knew he would pay any price, meet any condition, to earn the right to be their father. The sun had fully set by the time he left the community center, but for the first time in 5 years, he felt the stirring of real hope. The path to redemption would be long and difficult, but with every step, he would be moving closer to the family he had lost through his own mistakes. Chapter 10. The Long Road Home. The week of farm labor began on a Monday morning in late summer, with Adam reporting to the fields before sunrise. Gone was the expensive suit and polished appearance. Instead, he wore work boots and durable clothing that would soon be covered in honest dirt. The farm manager, Mr. Peterson, barely acknowledged him as he assigned tasks for the day. "Start with the irrigation pipes in the east field," Mr. Peterson instructed gruffly. "They need to be checked and cleaned before the morning watering cycle begins." The work was grueling, unlike anything Adam had ever experienced. His manicured hands quickly blistered as he wrestled with heavy pipes and stubborn valves. The summer sun beat down mercilessly, and by noon his muscles screamed in protest at each movement. From a distance, he occasionally caught glimpses of the farmhouse where Sable and the children stayed secluded during his trial week. Sometimes he thought he heard children's laughter carried on the breeze, but he kept his promise and never tried to get closer. Each evening he returned to his modest hotel room in the nearby town, his body aching and his mind full of new respect for the agricultural empire Sable's family had built. The land he had once dismissed as a simple solution to his gambling debts now revealed its true value, not just in dollars, but in the sweat and dedication required to make it flourish. The week ended with Adam having earned a grudging respect from the farm workers. Mr. Peterson's final report to Sable was brief but significant. He didn't quit, didn't complain, did every task assigned without argument. But this was just the beginning of Adam's journey to redemption. The real challenge lay in gathering the $600 million needed to repay Sable for her sacrifice. He threw himself into rebuilding the Bevan furniture empire with renewed purpose, this time focusing on sustainable practices and ethical business decisions. The first year was the hardest. Adam sold his personal properties, liquidated his luxury assets, and moved into a simple apartment. Every decision was made with one goal in mind: earning back the right to know his children. He expanded the furniture business methodically, opening new markets while maintaining strict quality control. The Bevan name, once associated with scandal and excess, began to represent innovation and integrity. Each successful venture brought him closer to his goal, but the path was longer than he had imagined. Regular AA meetings became the cornerstone of his routine. His sponsor, Michael, became both friend and conscience, helping him navigate the challenges of maintaining sobriety while under enormous pressure. Every milestone Chip earned was photographed and sent to Sable through Uncle James, tangible proof of his commitment to change. 3 years into his journey, a major breakthrough came when Adam developed a revolutionary sustainable furniture manufacturing process. The patents alone generated significant revenue, but more importantly, they demonstrated his ability to create value through innovation rather than exploitation. Throughout these years, he received occasional updates about the children through Uncle James. Each piece of information was precious: Alexander's victory in the school science fair, Benjamin's leading role in the children's theater production, Charlotte's art being displayed at the local gallery. He kept a journal of every detail, hoping that someday he could share with them how much they had been loved from afar. The 4th year brought both triumphs and tests. A competitor offered to buy the Bevan Company for an amount that would have made reaching the $600 million goal much easier, but Adam declined. Sable had specified that the money must be earned honestly, and he understood that taking shortcuts would defeat the purpose of her challenge. Instead, he focused on expanding their eco-friendly furniture lines, partnering with sustainable forestry initiatives, and developing new markets in emerging economies. Each success was built on solid business principles rather than the risky ventures of his past. Through it all, he maintained his sobriety. 5 years of continuous attendance at AA meetings, 5 years of clean drug tests, 5 years of rebuilding not just his business, but himself. The man who emerged bore little resemblance to the drunk who had shattered his family on that Christmas night. Finally, after 5 years of dedicated work, Adam reached his financial goal. The $600 million had been earned through legitimate business practices, documented meticulously to show the source of every dollar. He had transformed the Bevan furniture empire into a global leader in sustainable manufacturing, earning respect in the industry, not for his wealth, but for his innovations. On the day he prepared to return to the village, Adam visited his father's grave. Richard Bevan's headstone stood silent in the morning mist as his son knelt before it. "I finally understand, Dad," he said quietly. "The value of hard work, the importance of legacy, the true meaning of family. I hope I've become someone you would be proud of." As he drove toward the village, Adam's heart was full of hope and trepidation. He had met all three of Sable's conditions: the manual labor, the financial restitution, and 5 years of proven sobriety. Now he would face his greatest challenge, earning the right to be part of his children's lives. What he couldn't know as he approached the village was that fate had one final cruel test waiting for him. The redemption he had worked so hard to earn would come at a price he could never have imagined, and the family he longed to rebuild would be forever changed by the time he arrived. During those 5 years of transformation, Adam's personal evolution ran deeper than just business success and sobriety. Every Thursday night, without fail, he would sit in a small room at St. Mark's Church with his AA group, sharing his struggles and victories. The wooden chairs arranged in a circle became his sanctuary, the place where he could be completely honest about his journey. "My name is Adam," he would say, "and I'm an alcoholic. Today marks 1,825 days of sobriety." The milestone was met with supportive applause from the group who had watched his transformation over the years. "Every day I work to earn back what I lost, not just in dollars, but in trust and love." His sponsor, Michael, had become more than just a guide through sobriety. During the darkest moments of doubt, when the pressure of earning $600 million seemed insurmountable, Michael's steady presence kept him focused. They would meet for coffee at a small diner near Adam's apartment, far from the upscale restaurants he once frequented. "Remember," Michael would say, studying Adam over his coffee cup, "this isn't just about the money. It's about becoming the kind of father those children deserve. Every clean day, every honest dollar is a brick in the foundation you're building." The business transformation came with its own set of challenges. The board of directors initially resisted his radical shift towards sustainability, arguing that the costs would eat into profits. Adam responded by buying out the most resistant members, using his personal savings to ensure control over the company's direction. Innovation became his driving force. The Bevan Research Center, established in year 3, brought together designers, environmental scientists, and manufacturing experts. They developed groundbreaking processes that turned agricultural waste into luxury materials. Rice straw, typically burned as waste, was transformed into elegant veneers. Coffee grounds were compressed into durable tabletops. Each innovation brought them closer to the financial goal while creating real environmental impact. The company's workforce grew from 3,000 to 15,000 employees worldwide. Adam insisted on fair wages and excellent working conditions in every facility. Factory floors were air-conditioned, workers received comprehensive health care, and education programs were established for employees' children. The Bevan name, once associated with luxury at any cost, became synonymous with ethical business practices. Through Uncle James, Adam received carefully curated updates about his children. Each piece of information was precious, carefully recorded in his journal with sketches and notes. He learned that Alexander had won the regional science fair with a project about sustainable agriculture, unknowingly following in his mother's footsteps. Benjamin had started a playground buddy system at school, making sure no child ever played alone. Charlotte's art had been featured in a children's charity auction, her painting of 3 butterflies raising funds for local education programs. These updates were both comfort and torture. Adam kept 3 frames on his office desk, each containing a photograph secretly taken from a distance. Alexander concentrating on a book under a tree, Benjamin playing soccer with village children, Charlotte setting up her easel in the garden. They were his motivation on the hardest days, reminding him of what he was working toward. The rejection of Golden Dragon's buyout offer in year 4 tested his resolve like nothing else. The Chinese company's $8 billion offer would have solved his financial obligations overnight. The board meeting lasted 18 hours, with every member arguing in favor of the sale. Adam stood firm. This isn't about finding the quickest path to $600 million, he explained to the frustrated board. It's about proving that we can build something valuable the right way. If we sell now, we're just proving that everything has a price. Some things, integrity, redemption, family, are worth more than a quick profit. The decision cost him several board members and temporarily dropped their stock price, but it proved to be pivotal in their long-term success. Companies and consumers increasingly valued authentic commitment to sustainability, and Bevan Furniture's dedication to these principles set them apart in the market. Every major success was marked by a visit to his father's grave. Adam would bring progress reports, sharing them with the silent stone as if his father could hear. "We're using bamboo processing techniques that you probably never imagined, Dad," he would say, "but we're still building everything with the same attention to detail you taught me. Every piece tells a story, just like you always said." On particularly difficult days, he would drive to the village outskirts, parking where he could see the farmhouse in the distance. He never got closer, respecting the boundaries Sable had set, but these pilgrimages helped him stay focused on his goals. Sometimes he would see the children playing in the garden, their laughter carried on the wind, a reminder of everything he had lost and was fighting to regain. As the 5 years drew to a close, Adam had not only met Sable's conditions, but had exceeded them in ways that transformed an entire industry. The Bevan furniture empire had become a model of sustainable luxury, proving that profit and principle could coexist. He had earned the $600 million through innovation and ethical business practices, maintaining his sobriety through every challenge. The morning he prepared to return to the village with proof of his accomplishments, Adam felt a sense of completion he had never known before. The leather portfolio under his arm contained bank statements, AA records, and detailed documentation of how every dollar had been earned. But more importantly, it contained the story of his transformation, from a drunk who had thrown away his family to a man who had rebuilt himself from the ground up. What he couldn't know, as he drove through the familiar countryside, was that fate had been writing a different story during those 5 years. The redemption he had worked so hard to earn would come with a price he never expected, and the family he longed to rebuild would be forever altered by the time he arrived at the village crossroads. Chapter 11. Too late. The morning Adam returned to the village was deceptively beautiful. Spring flowers bloomed along the roadside, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of new beginnings. His hybrid car, chosen for its environmental consciousness rather than luxury, moved quietly through the familiar streets. The leather portfolio on the passenger seat contained proof of his completed conditions. Bank statements showing the $600 million, AA attendance records, and documentation of his transformation. He noticed something was different as soon as he entered the village center. Black ribbons adorned many of the shop windows, and the usual bustle of village life seemed muted, subdued. His heart began to race, though his mind refused to acknowledge what these signs might mean. The community center where he had last seen Sable 5 years ago was closed. A simple notice on the door: art classes temporarily suspended. Through the windows, he could see Charlotte's paintings still hanging on the walls, their bright colors a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere outside. Uncle James was waiting for him at the village square, seated on a bench beneath the old oak tree. The years had aged him considerably, grief etching deep lines around his eyes. He stood as Adam approached, his expression a mixture of sympathy and sorrow that made Adam's blood run cold. "You're too late," Uncle James said quietly, the words falling like stones in the morning stillness. "Sable. She passed away 3 months ago. Cancer. She fought it privately, didn't want anyone to know until—" The world tilted sideways. Adam grabbed the back of the bench for support, his carefully prepared portfolio falling forgotten to the ground. Papers scattered in the breeze. Proof of 5 years of work, of change, of redemption. now meaningless in the face of this devastating news. "No," he whispered, the word a prayer and a protest. "She can't be. I did everything she asked. I changed everything. I earned the money. I stayed sober. She knew," Uncle James interrupted gently. "She followed your progress through the business news, through the AA reports I shared with her. She was proud of the changes you made, Adam. But she didn't want you to know about her illness. She didn't want your redemption to be motivated by pity or urgency." The village square spun around Adam as memories flooded his mind. Sable's face the last time he saw her, strong and determined as she laid out her conditions. Had there been signs even then? Had she known what was growing inside her even as she planned his path to redemption? "The children," he managed to ask, his voice breaking. "Are they—" "They're safe," Uncle James assured him. "They're at home, with Mrs. Rodriguez. Sable. She left instructions, very specific instructions." He reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope, Sable's elegant handwriting immediately recognizable on the front. Adam's hands trembled as he took it, the paper feeling impossibly heavy with the weight of final words. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before her death. "Dear Adam, if you're reading this, it means you fulfilled all 3 conditions, just as I knew you would. It also means I'm no longer here to see the man you've become. Don't mourn what we lost. Celebrate what we created. Our children need their father now, not the man who left us that Christmas night, but the man you've become through these 5 years of hard work and dedication, the man who rebuilt himself from the ground up, who chose integrity over easy profits, who maintained his sobriety through every challenge. I've watched your journey from afar, seen the changes you've made in yourself and your business. Each success made me more certain that this day would come, the day when you would be truly ready to be the father our children deserve. Alexander, Benjamin, and Charlotte know about you. I've shared stories of our early years, of your father's craftsmanship, of the love that created them. They know about your struggles and your journey to overcome them. Most importantly, they know that their father spent 5 years working to become worthy of them. Don't waste time with regrets, Adam. We can't change the past, but you've proven you can build a better future. Our children need that future now more than ever. My final request is simple. Love them with the same dedication you showed in meeting my conditions. Protect them with the same determination you used to rebuild your business. Guide them with the same strength you found in maintaining your sobriety. They are your greatest legacy, Adam, greater than any business empire or fortune. Show them that love can overcome any obstacle, that redemption is possible with enough dedication, that the strongest people are those who can admit their mistakes and work to correct them. I forgive you, Adam. I forgave you long ago. Now it's time for you to forgive yourself and focus on being the father our children need. With hope for the future, Sable. Tears fell freely down Adam's face as he read and reread the letter. Uncle James waited patiently, allowing him this moment to process both his loss and his responsibility. "She planned everything," Uncle James finally said. "The children's guardianship transfers to you, provided you maintain your sobriety and continue the positive changes you've made. They're expecting you. Mrs. Rodriguez has been preparing them for this day." Adam carefully folded the letter, placing it close to his heart. "Take me to her first," he whispered. "Please, I need to say goodbye." The village cemetery was small but beautifully maintained. Sable's grave was covered in fresh flowers, evidence of the community's continued love for her. The headstone was elegant in its simplicity, bearing her name and the dates that bracketed a life ended too soon. Adam knelt before it, placing the bouquet of roses he had brought with him among the other flowers. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry for everything. But I promise you, Sable, I'll be the father they deserve. I'll make you proud." As he spoke these words, a gentle breeze stirred the flowers, carrying the sweet scent of spring across the cemetery. Life would go on, changed but unbroken. And somewhere in the village, 3 children waited to meet the father who had spent 5 years becoming worthy of them. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with the delicate work of building relationships with children who knew him only through stories. But Adam was ready. 5 years of hard work had prepared him for this moment, though not for the bittersweet way it had arrived. Standing at Sable's grave, Adam made a new vow: to honor her memory by being the best father possible, to guide their children with the wisdom he had gained through his journey of redemption, and to ensure that Sable's final act of forgiveness would not be in vain. Chapter 12. Legacy of Love. 10 years after Sable's passing, the Morrison Bevan estate flourished under a spring morning's gentle sunshine. The mansion, once a symbol of Adam's past excesses, had been transformed into a warm family home filled with laughter and love. Photographs lined the walls, not just of the present, but carefully curated images from the past, ensuring Sable's presence remained alive in every room. Adam stood in his study, adjusting his tie as he prepared for a special day. At 48, his hair had begun to grey at the temples, each silver strand a testament to the years of redemption and rebuilding. The room, once dominated by business accolades, now showcased his children's achievements, alongside Sable's photographs. "Dad," Alexander's voice called from the doorway. At 15, he was nearly as tall as his father, with Sable's thoughtful green eyes and Adam's strong jawline. Benjamin's still fussing with his hair, and Charlotte can't decide which painting to display. Adam smiled, recognizing Sable's practical nature in their eldest. "Tell your brother that his hair is fine, and remind your sister that all her artwork is worthy of showing today." Today marked the 10th anniversary of the Sable Morrison Memorial Foundation, an organization Adam had established to honor his late wife's legacy. The foundation provided scholarships for underprivileged students and supported sustainable agricultural initiatives worldwide. The annual celebration had become a family tradition, a way to keep Sable's memory alive while building toward the future. Benjamin burst into the study, his tie askew, but his smile bright. Uncle James just arrived with the vintage photographs, and guess what? He found Mum's old diary from when she was our age. Charlotte followed close behind, her artistic nature evident in the paint smudges on her fingers, despite the elegant dress she wore. "Dad, come look at this." She held up a leather-bound journal. "It's full of her drawings. She never told us she could draw too." Adam gathered his children close, their presence a constant reminder of both what he had almost lost and what he had gained through redemption. The triplets had grown into remarkable teenagers, each carrying pieces of both their parents while forging their own unique paths. Alexander had inherited Sable's business acumen and Adam's drive for innovation. At 15, he was already developing sustainable farming techniques that combined traditional Morrison agricultural knowledge with modern technology. His latest project, a smart irrigation system, had won the National Science Fair. Benjamin, with his father's charm and his mother's compassion, had become the bridge builder of the family. His natural diplomatic skills made him the perfect ambassador for both the family business and the foundation. He had recently started a peer counseling program at their school, helping other teenagers dealing with family challenges. Charlotte, their artistic soul, captured life's beauty through her paintings, just as Sable had through her quiet wisdom. Her artwork, featuring themes of family, forgiveness, and growth, had already gained recognition in local galleries. Her latest series, Moments with Mom, was based on the stories and photographs they had preserved of Sable. "Before we head to the foundation ceremony," Adam said, gathering his children around Sable's favorite armchair, "there's something important we need to share." He opened an ornate wooden box, crafted in the Bevan furniture tradition, revealing a collection of letters written in Sable's elegant hand. Your mother wrote these for each of your major milestones. She wanted to be part of your journey, even if she couldn't be here physically. Tears and smiles mingled as they read through Sable's words of wisdom and love. She had thought of everything: letters for their 16th birthdays, high school graduations, first loves, and future weddings. Each envelope was carefully dated, a mother's love reaching through time to embrace her children. She knew, Charlotte whispered, clutching a letter to her heart. She knew she wouldn't be here, but she found a way to stay with us anyway. Adam nodded, his own eyes moist. Your mother was the strongest person I've ever known. She taught me that true love isn't about grand gestures or easy promises. It's about the daily choice to be better, to do better, to love better. The foundation ceremony that afternoon was a testament to Sable's lasting impact. The Great Hall of the Morrison Bevan Agricultural Research Center was filled with scholarship recipients, sustainable farming innovators, and community members whose lives had been touched by Sable's legacy. Alexander presented the Foundation's latest agricultural initiatives, his confidence reminiscent of Sable's business presentations. Benjamin introduced the new scholarship recipients, his natural charm making each student feel specially honored. Charlotte unveiled her Moments with Mom series, the paintings capturing Sable's spirit in ways that moved the audience to tears. When Adam took the podium, he looked out at the gathering with profound gratitude. 10 years ago, I learned that redemption sometimes comes too late for second chances. But Sable taught us that love, real, transformative love, creates ripples that continue long after we're gone. He gestured to their children, now standing tall and proud. These remarkable young people are living proof that love can overcome any obstacle, that forgiveness can heal the deepest wounds. And that legacy isn't about money or power. It's about the lives we touch and the changes we inspire. As he spoke, a gentle breeze carried the scent of roses through the open windows. Sable's favorite flowers still blooming in the garden she had loved. In that moment, her presence felt tangible, as if she were standing among them, proud of the family they had become. That evening, after the ceremonies and celebrations, the family gathered in their private garden. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, just as it had on that fateful Christmas night so many years ago. But now, instead of broken promises and bitter words, the air was filled with hope and healing. Adam watched his children sharing stories and laughter, each of them carrying a piece of Sable in their hearts, while forging their own paths forward. The journey of redemption had cost him everything, only to give him back something far more precious, a family built on understanding, forgiveness, and unconditional love. As stars began appearing in the twilight sky, Adam whispered a quiet thank you to the woman who had taught him the true price of love. Sable's legacy lived on, not just in their children or the foundation that bore her name, but in the profound truth she had taught them all. That love, when pure and true, has the power to transform, to heal, and to create something beautiful from even the deepest pain. The Morrison Bevan legacy would continue, guided by the wisdom of the past and the promise of the future. And somewhere Adam knew Sable was smiling, proud of the family that had grown from the seeds of her forgiveness and love. Subscribe if liked.